Hello world, there are plenty of my favorite video games within Sony exclusives, but when it comes to Horizon series, I genuinely cannot understand the wonder of their success. I finished both Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West at their launch, and honestly, I got no clue why are they so successful. Well, I have some thoughts on it. But let's just start from the very beginning.
When Guerrilla Games first ventured into uncharted territory with Horizon Zero Dawn in 2017, they were faced with some major challenges. The studio had made a name for itself with the Killzone series, so making the jump to an open-world RPG was a risky move. Not just any open-world RPG either, a massive, story-driven one with a focus on stealth combat, exploration, and a complex narrative. Many elements such as the world-building and crafting systems were new to the team. As a result, Zero Dawn launched with several features that felt underdeveloped or awkward. For example, the game's crafting and inventory system was criticized for being clunky and unintuitive. Players had to manage a variety of items, crafting materials, and modifications, but the system could feel tedious and overly complicated at times. These mechanics weren't as polished as the narrative or combat, which created a bit of a disconnect in the overall experience. The game's combat was another mixed bag. While the strategic, bow-based combat was a highlight for many, especially when fighting the robotic creatures, it had its shortcomings. AI behavior wasn't always as consistent as players expected, particularly when it came to human enemies. It could sometimes feel like the human AI was downright dumb, with enemies getting stuck on terrain or failing to properly respond to Aloy's actions. The early encounters with human enemies often felt repetitive and lacked the same level of depth that the robotic battles had. Pacing issues were another problem that plagued Zero Dawn. The game's early hours had a lot of slower, tutorial-heavy content, and many players felt it took too long to hit its stride. The plot didn't always feel urgent, and while the open world was gorgeous, there were times when exploring felt like a distraction from the main narrative. Some side quests were fun, but others felt like filler, almost as if they were thrown in to pad out the game's length.
I gotta be honest, after I finished the first game, it felt so empty, so mid from every perspective, whether it's gameplay or story plot we're talking about. It was neither good or bad. It felt like a gun without a taste. It was just pointless. So you might ask, why the second game even exists then? Did they improve all of the problems and made the game better? Well,
when Guerrilla Games launched Horizon Forbidden West in 2022, the pressure was on to deliver a worthy follow-up. They had the benefit of a more refined game engine and a successful foundation to build upon. However, despite its major improvements, Forbidden West still had a fair share of issues. First off, the game's technical performance was problematic for some players. While it was absolutely stunning graphically, Forbidden West experienced frame rate drops and technical bugs, especially on PlayStation 4. Despite being optimized for the PS5, the performance on the PS4 version was criticized for being subpar, especially when it came to loading times and texture pop-ins. This made the game feel less polished than it should have been, and it took Guerrilla multiple patches to stabilize the experience. Then there's the issue of repetitiveness. While the main storyline is engaging, Forbidden West still falls into some of the same traps as its predecessor. While the world is more expansive, with new biomes and more varied environments, it still occasionally feels like players are going through the same motions. Side quests are again hit or miss. Some are deeply engaging and well crafted, while others are more forgettable fetched quests or tasks that feel disconnected from the main story. The combat in Forbidden West has its fair share of improvements, but it's also one of the areas where players felt some of the changes were more superficial than groundbreaking. The addition of the new weapons and abilities didn't quite solve the problem of some of the combat's predictability. Even with the introduction of new enemy types, the core combat mechanics didn't evolve as much as some fans had hoped, leaving the fighting feeling somewhat familiar after dozens of hours of play. Moreover, Forbidden West introduced new systems, such as underwater exploration, but these additions were not as polished as one might expect from a AAA title. While swimming was a good concept, it was ultimately a bit shallow, no pun intended, and didn't add much in terms of gameplay depth. The underwater segments felt tagged on, and the mechanics weren't as refined or intuitive as the rest of the game. And then again, there's a problem with the dialogues. The game occasionally falls into a trap of over-explaining everything. Conversations can drag on for far too long, and players often found themselves skipping through lengthy dialogue just to get back to the action. This extensive dialogue could feel like padding and slow down the pacing of the game, especially during more action-packed sequences. Both games feature stunning world building, but there's an undeniable flaw in how the world feels at times. The massive, lush landscapes are breathtaking, yet they can also be empty at times. In Horizon Zero Dawn, the expansive open world was often criticized for feeling too desolate. Despite the rich backstory, it was sometimes difficult to feel truly immersed when there were large stretches of land with very little activity or interaction, making the world feel more like a series of empty stages than a living, breathing ecosystem. Forbidden West attempted to fix this by filling the world with more human settlements and engaging characters, but it still couldn't shake the feeling of empty spaces in between major points of interest. Yes, the world is beautiful, but when players are just running for minutes on end without much to do, it does begin to feel like a chore, especially if you are just trying to get to the next major storyline quest.
Horizon Forbidden West is the game that actually surprised me in some ways. I remember my thoughts on the open world. Everything looked so amazing. The graphics, I gotta be real here, these graphics are at that time for 100% and probably even for today are the best graphics I've ever seen in any video game. They are just impressive, and that was on PS5's hardware. I never tried it on PC, but on PS5 the game was shining. With one little note actually, because you could only see those impressive 4K graphics with 30 FPS. And this is the problem of PS5, honestly, not that much of a game, because just PS5 cannot run that games on that graphics. Well, then there's a question, why do you even do these graphics if you have to lower FPS and at the same time make the experience of players worse? But yeah, that's another question for another video, so we're not going to go deep into that in this video. But yeah, the game really shined and I was impressed. The underwater, I've never seen that much detailed underwater in any game before and after. That was something that impressed me as well. But except that, I think all of the other problems that Horizon series had with the first game, they are actually there. When it comes to Horizon series characters, they are all empty, they are all forgettable. I personally do not remember none of them, except that one villain, and I forgot his name. His name will be right here with the photo, somewhere right there. And that is actually tells a lot, just by itself, because if the character is interesting, if it's good, and if it's well written, then you usually do not forget. And it's not the problems with my memory, because I remember a lot of characters from a lot of franchises, but with this franchise, yeah, I don't remember nobody except for Aloy, her father, and that villain that I just mentioned, and you could see him right here. And I thought, well, maybe it was only my problem. But then when I was doing the research for this video, I went to Reddit and I found the exact same thoughts as mine and the exact same character, even like this man mentioned the exact same character, the exact same villain, saying that he is the one that was okay, and he did not remember none of them. You can see that post like right here. And yeah, this is the problem, you know. That is why that world is just not that immersive. You cannot relate, you cannot feel that relationship between characters, and that kind of breaks it all. It's kind of okay, especially with Forbidden West. The gameplay is cool, pretty cool actually, not bad. I gotta be real, it's pretty cool. But when it comes to everything else with the characters, open world is big. In Forbidden West, it looks gorgeous. Yeah, that's true, absolutely. But you cannot do nothing interesting there. Honestly, I didn't find nothing. If I'm not, yeah, I know it's gonna be wrong even to compare these two open worlds, but I'm still gonna do that. Do you remember Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom and their open world? It's incomparable. You cannot compare with Horizon series, right? Because Horizon's open world is just empty when it comes to something you can do there. You cannot do almost nothing, at least nothing interesting, right? And there's no activities. And yeah, and that's why you do not want to go back. At least I don't want to go back to this game to play it just after I finish the main story. And the main story though, bro, there was some good points, but they missed them all. And this final fight with that woman, I don't even remember her. I don't remember her name, her face, nothing about her. I remember that fight, and yeah, that's it. But you cannot make a character, a villain, the main villain, the last boss, let's say, forgettable. He or she can't be like that. It should be like a good story, you know? I can remember a lot, like almost every main villain from every cool franchises I remember and I know. And here, I don't remember nobody except for Aloy, her dad, and that dude that I just mentioned. Yeah, and that's it. So, yeah, and that's really bad. That's why I don't like Horizon series. And I know some people that genuinely love that series, that genuinely love the games, everything about it, open world in it and everything. And yeah, of course I know, like, for each his own or her own, but it still surprises me. And the last point I want to touch upon is Horizon series success. Why are these games so successful? And the main point here and the main reason here for me is Hermen Hulst. If you don't know who is Hermen Hulst, you should watch my previous videos. I've talked about it a lot there. And I think that Hermen Hulst used his position in Sony and PlayStation Studios to promote his franchises, you know, or at least the franchises he's worked on in the past, and exactly Horizon series, right? We got so much content on these games. Like, we got Lego Horizon, we got Horizon Forbidden West that came out pretty recently, we got Horizon VR game, exclusive VR game for PSVR 2, we got online multiplayer Horizon game that is coming soon, and all of that games, and they are promoting them like very, very hardly, you know. The promotion is on those games are very hard, and it's not the common thing for Sony. For example, if you remember, the recent port of Marvel Spider-Man 2 on PC weren't promoted at all, not even on those platforms like Steam and Epic Games. It wasn't promoted at all since the day of release. So it's not all I want to say is that it's not usual, it's not common for Sony. It's not like they do it all the time, you know. I think that here we got the very, very strong promotion of those games. Alright, so this is gonna be it for this video. Let me know what do you think about everything that I mentioned before in this video in the comment section down below. I would love to have a conversation with all of you guys and to read all of your comments, as I usually and always do. And I'm really wondering, am I the only one who don't like that franchise that much? Or maybe you have the same experience and thoughts on it. At least I know that there's another one user who thinks the same, and this is that dude from Reddit. But yeah, that's gonna be it. And I would very much appreciate if you could leave that like, as I said, comment, and maybe even a subscription. If you want to see more content like that, I'm planning on doing a lot more, better, and bigger with every single video. So it's totally up to you, but I would very much appreciate that. And this is gonna be it. Thank you for watching, guys. See you, world.